actually the video I was planning on making. I was inspired to start the new year with a little budget-friendly refresh and a little bit of organizing, and somehow a lot of it went sideways. I ended up with something I'm happy with in the end, but I'm going to take you along and show you all the places that I completely messed up while trying to reorganize my craft room.
Okay, maybe that was a little dramatic, but let me explain what I was trying to accomplish with this little craft room refresh while I organize my fabric. Yes, I had to crawl under my desk to do this, and yes, the shelf unit has to be turned sideways because it's holding up one side of my desktop. Also, I promise the lighting is better in the rest of this video. I forgot to use my video light for this particular shot. Anyway, if you're new here, my crafting space is 2/3 of the second bedroom in our apartment. I have this entire long wall and then a small island in the middle of the room that we can move if we need to. The other third of the room is my husband's office. He works from home, so we both use this room a lot, and he is so gracious to put up with the absolute chaos that this room regularly is. We moved into this apartment about 10 months ago, but we've been busy getting used to life in a new state, and I started a new job as well, so it's taken that long for me to finally feel settled and ready to tackle some additional projects. One thing I want to note as well, I know you've seen me make a few of these videos lately, and I want to note here that especially if you're someone who explores a lot of different crafty outlets and crafty micro hobbies, I guess, it's very likely that your storage and space needs will change over time. So it's always a good idea to reevaluate every once in a while to make sure your space still works for you and the projects that you're doing, so that the things that you need at the time are handy. It doesn't have to be a huge expensive makeover. It doesn't have to cost anything at all. It can just be rethinking the current space. It can be something as simple as moving a shelving unit or swapping some supplies around. Personally, we have some really big savings goals this year, so I am definitely on a tighter budget. And I accomplished everything in this video for not very much money. And not including things obviously that I already own or repurposed. I've been collecting random storage for years. So a lot of what you'll see here is just stuff that I already had. My goals for this particular makeover are, first, the main goal is to redefine zones for my current interests. So you may have heard of the zones concept before, but if not, essentially you have several little mini spaces within your craft area based on the type of craft you're doing. And in case I'm losing you, zones don't have space requirements. So that means that if your craft space is just a little desk and a closet, your coloring zone could be a drawer with all of your books and pencils in one place. Your journaling zone is a cutting mat on the left side of your desk with journaling supplies in the drawers below it. So whatever space you have, you can split it into zones. My current interests include paper crafting, sewing, and painting, so those are the zones that I am attempting to set up. As far as fails go, I'm really happy with how the sewing and paper crafting zones are coming together, but the painting zone was a complete failure, and I'll kind of talk about that a little later too, but that's for later in the video. Also, I promise I'll have some really satisfying glamour shots at the end of this video of the space with the stuff that I was able to accomplish. Another thing I want to note here is that this project took me like 2 days, and through the magic of editing, I've cut it down to less than an hour, but it really did take quite a bit of time and quite a bit of thought and energy. Also, I should have put more thought into it. But anyway, in addition to setting up zones, the other things that you'll see me do in this project is making my countertop white. You can see in this footage, it's already white, and that's because I'm sharing this out of order. But I love the wood look everywhere else, but I like the craft room to have a white surface just because I'm working with so much color typically, because that's more my style. I also needed to hang up my pegboard because it was leaning up against the wall this whole time, and then I just had some stuff in front of it, and I wanted to get rid of the stuff in front of the pegboard so that there was more space for pegs, and I wanted it actually installed on the wall, and I was just procrastinating because I don't enjoy hanging things. Anyway, I also in one of my recent videos about cleaning, you may have heard me talk about my ribbon stash and how I was really struggling to organize that. And thanks to a couple of you commenting, I was reminded that dowels, hanging spools of ribbon on dowels is a really good way to store ribbon, and I was able to make space on my pegboard for that. So you'll see the result of that as well. I don't have the behind the scenes of it, but I did hang my ribbon on dowels on my pegboard with dowels I already had, so it didn't cost me anything and made me super happy. So thank you guys if you were the ones that commented. I appreciate it so much. And then the other thing I wanted to do was add bin clips to my baskets so I always know what's in them. So I was at Target the other day and I found some bin clips that were in the dollar spot that were $1 for 4 clips, and it was a great deal, and I've been looking for bin clips, so I bought them. And at the end of the video I'll show you how I put vinyl on them with my Cricut. So bin clips, and then I also did a bunch of organizing, trying to get the things that I use most into drawers that I'll actually use. That didn't go so well, and I'm going to show you the spots where I completely reorganized a whole cabinet, and then I had to take it apart and move other stuff in there. Anyway, let's dive in. So right now I'm organizing my fabric, so this far left of the desk is going to be my sewing zone, and the sewing machine is going to go right above this. So I am using this rack. I repurposed it. I had a bunch of random stuff in there from other things that I was storing, and all of that came out, and I'm just folding and reorganizing all my fabric. I organize it loosely by color, and that is going to be that pretty much. And I'm just moving all the stuff out of the way. The next project that you're going to see me work on once I finish this up is making the countertop white. I had to move everything off of it and away from it anyway, so it was a natural starting point, and it is the project I started with, even though it's not the first thing in this video. In our old apartment, I had a different surface in my crafting space, and I had covered it in white vinyl, and I loved it, so I really wanted to do the same thing with this surface. The surface that I have is a beautiful faux wood countertop from Ikea. I got on a crazy sale in their damaged section. I think maybe it had warped or bowed slightly, and so they couldn't sell it as a countertop. It was such a good deal. I think I paid $70 for it. I've had it for a couple years, and I love it. I did want to make sure that I didn't damage the wood look top in case I use it elsewhere later. So after some thought, I actually flipped it over, which is why you're seeing just this like weird paper. So this is the back side of the countertop that I'm applying the vinyl to. I'm actually not sure how this vinyl application is going to hold up because the back of the countertop is kind of a papery backing, and I'm hoping that the adhesive holds and it doesn't peel up. But the vinyl I'm using is also really, really cheap. I'm going to link it for you, but just know that it's really more of a shelf liner or a contact paper kind of thing, and I actually had to use 2 rows of it because it was too narrow. I could have bought vinyl that was wide enough. It was just much more expensive, and for this I really wanted it to be a cheap, quick thing, and I didn't want to invest a lot of money. It doesn't seem super durable so far, but we'll see. A lot of the time when I'm crafting, I'm working on a mat or something and not directly on my surface anyway. So what you're seeing right now is me laying the first row, and I will say using this sewing ruler to get the whole width of the vinyl smoothed at the same time really, really helped. I have a whole nother more extensive video on how to apply vinyl to your countertop, but my biggest tips are to clean your surface really well first. And then go very slowly. Like you cannot go too slowly on this. The slower you go, the fewer bubbles you'll have. And then when you're using a scraper or a ruler, make sure you hold it at an angle like I'm doing. So if you hold it straight up and down, it will tear the vinyl. And then here along the front edge, you're seeing me crease it. Creasing it first is really important to not get bubbles on that front edge. So crease it really well with your finger and with a scraper. I used a smaller Cricut scraper when I got to the front of the vinyl, and I'll give you a closer up shot of how I'm doing the front in just a second here. Now, normally I would continue the vinyl all the way under the front edge for a really clean finish, but I didn't want to damage the surface on the other side in case I decide to use it for something else, so I actually cut it off at the bottom edge instead of folding it underneath like I've done in the past. So here I'm using the scraper, my Cricut scraper, to just smooth the front edge, since that's what we'll be seeing. I really wanted that to look nice. And you can see it's not perfect, but hey. It's cheap vinyl, what are you gonna do? But I do have a trick for a perfectly cut edge, and one of the clips I have coming up is me using an X-Acto knife to cut it. You have to use an X-Acto knife with a really nice sharp blade, and then hold the blade at about a 45-degree angle to the surface and press it against the surface. So essentially what you're going to see me do here is I'm essentially bracing the blade of the X-Acto knife against the surface and then just running it across. And it creates such a smooth cut. Do as much as you can in one smooth motion. For the rest of it, I went in a much longer motion. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I hate the way the seam looks in the middle of the desk, but let's be honest, most of it's going to be covered with stuff, and it was a great budget project, so I'm going to call it a win. Now that the countertop was done, it was time to hang my pegboard. You do need to leave space behind, and I know they sell spacers, but I didn't have that the first time I hung this, so I just took 2 hex nuts and glued them together, and there's enough space on the inside of the hex nut, if you get the right size, that the screw just like fits nicely in there and doesn't scrape. This is how my pegboard looked before, and there was so much stuff in front of it. I lost so much storage. So you can see kind of in the background here, I'm putting the sewing stuff on the left. So the Cricut transfer tape is my kind of dividing line, and all the stuff to the left is my sewing materials. And then all the stuff at the right is like paper crafting type stuff in general. I've had this pegboard literally forever. I've probably reinstalled it like 4 different times in different places in different configurations. Such a cheap budget option for hanging things. And then the hooks I've had forever. I think I thrifted them. I got them for super cheap somehow. I don't remember how. But anyway, just getting this organized and ready. So like I said, this far left portion of the in the corner by the windows is where I'm doing my sewing zone. And so this pink shelving system was actually in the middle of my desk before, and I moved it all the way to the left to utilize the corner, and then my sewing machine will go just to the right of it. But those drawers were filled with all kinds of stuff from just everything. Like I had my hot glue, my just a bunch of random crafting supplies that I wanted to keep handy, all my craft paint, stuff like that. So what I ended up doing was taking all of that out and putting my sewing supplies into that drawer unit. Again, creating a sewing zone, so everything in that storage unit is now sewing related, and it helped free up space in other areas for some of the organization you're going to see me do next. So basically what I did was I walked around the craft room and I found everything that was sewing related, and I put it on the counter, and then I figured out how I wanted to arrange it, and have it arranged to like the top drawer is like sewing machine tools and an extra rotary cutter, and the next section is all embroidery stuff, and then the next drawer down is, I believe, glue or fasteners, and then the bottom drawer is elastic, and one of those drawers has all my pins and stuff, but I actually don't remember, and I didn't take a video of the inside of these drawers, so I apologize. They're not that well organized, to be honest. Everything's kind of jammed in there. This is definitely something I'm going to have to revisit later. Also, I'm just super excited to have a sewing machine again. I think I mentioned in a previous video, I got a sewing machine at an estate sale for $30. My old machine had broken and it wasn't worth it to fix it, because it would have cost the same amount as the machine to fix it, so it just wasn't worth it. So I got a sewing machine for $30 at an estate sale, and it works great, so I'm super happy about that. And maybe I can start using up some of my fabric stash. Well. It was finally time to put my sewing machine on the counter. I felt so excited when I did. I had it all cleaned off and ready to go. She's so pretty! Mostly because she works. It actually is really handy to have the window right there, because then I have like a space to put the cords down behind, and then I have a power strip underneath the desk. I also decided to put my Cricut on this desk instead of my Sizzix, and then I moved my Sizzix over to the island, and I think that will just work better. It'll give me more space to use the Cricut. Where I had the Cricut before, I had a cord running across the room, so this will work so much better because the cord just goes down behind the desk, whereas when it was on the island, there was a cord running across the floor, and that's just silly. So the cricket's over here, and then I moved the Sizzix over to the island. And then one other thing that I did was I had a random mini pegboard with its own collection of hooks and little containers. And I had a little space above my pegboard that wasn't in use, so I hung it above the sewing section and used it for more sewing supplies. And that was actually really helpful because I put all my things that I need to have handy, like while I'm sewing, like seam rippers and random extra white thread and stuff like that, on this pegboard that I had just hanging around. I think it was a Target dollar spot thing from like a while ago, but I just had it laying around, so I might as well use it. Okay, now we're on to the complete fail section. So there's just some sewing stuff, and I was like, oh, now I have this shelf, and the other craft supplies on this top shelf. So the bottom two shelves of this organizer are like props for styling. I used to be a photographer, and so we have a lot of styling props and like home decor things that I wanted to keep. So those are the bottom two shelves, but the top shelf is craft supplies that I just don't use very often. And I was like, oh, maybe I will take all of my memorabilia and note cards and things that still need to be journaled and scrapbooked and put those on that shelf. And that turned out to be a really terrible idea, you guys. I did not think that through. I was just like, oh, maybe this will work here. And here's the thing, like, that's going to happen when you're organizing your craft space, especially if you haven't plotted and like done the math and things. If you're just kind of going at it, you're gonna have some trial and error. This was definitely an error. You're gonna see me try to make all of this work, and then later in the video, I'm gonna go back and completely redo it and put something else on that shelf, and it ended up working out differently. But I wanted to put this in here and show you because I'm not perfect and I make a lot of mistakes. This was one of them, but at least I tried and found that it didn't work. But these are all my note cards and photos and memorabilia and stuff that I need to actually organize and do something with, which is why I'm just kind of stuffing them into bins because they're not organized as it is. So yeah, that's going to be a project for another day. That's going to be very much a rainy day, nothing else to do kind of project. Okay, the next fail was this craft paint situation. So I had the idea I needed storage for my craft paint, and I really wanted the bottoms of the bottles to show so that I could see exactly what I had for colors at a glance. And so I saw a bunch of ideas online, and one of the ideas that I had was taking, I had these cube organizers, these mesh cube organizers in our closet. And so I grabbed a couple pieces of that and thought I was gonna like tape them together or like, I don't know, use them as like a very DIY situation and just kind of stand it up. So I had this tape that I kind of wrapped around sections to kind of brace it. It really wasn't working well. I don't know why I kept going with it, but I did. As you can see, I fully committed to the whole thing. The thing that I realized is that the entire outside section of squares is smaller than the middle section of squares, if that makes any sense. The middle squares are the right size. The outer row and columns were not. And so I lost like, I don't know, a bunch, like probably, can't do math, like probably 30 or 40 slots just because of that. And so I committed fully to this DIY, put all the tape on, realized I was gonna have to leave those extra rolls in there to kind of brace it. It's so stupid. And then I tried adding all the paint in it. I mean, it did stand up on its own, but then I realized that it was only gonna hold like half my paint, and that was just not helpful. And yes, I know I can go on Amazon and just buy a paint organizer for like 30 bucks, and I may end up doing that, to be honest, because this was a debacle. So yeah, I tried to put it all in there and realized halfway through, you know, because I didn't just count them. I could have counted them, but I didn't do that. I was really low on brain cells this particular day, not gonna lie. And normally I would like count things first, figure out if it would work, but I didn't do that. And that was where I counted. I was like, oh, this actually really, really doesn't work. So yeah, I gave up on that. My next idea, I'd seen people just like stack them. And so I grabbed these cardboard photo boxes and like put them into this shelving thing and put all my paint in it. And I kind of organized it warm colors and cool colors, and then kind of by like dark to light, roughly. And honestly, I was doing it and I wasn't loving it. And I hated that there was random space above between the shelf and the box because that's just a waste of space. But I kept going, and I think I was just so, I really wanted to find a paint storage solution for $0, and this was one of those things that maybe I just should have spent some money. And I have a bunch of other paint stuff like brushes and stuff that I would love to have. I want this to be my paint zone, and I want to get all my brushes out of a drawer, but they're also ugly, and I really want some streamlined storage there, so I'm not really sure. I need to get some more bins. I need to really rethink this section, and this is kind of the fail. I shouldn't really call it a fail. I should just call it a revisit. This is me being really dumb and trying to just like switch it, and it went very poorly. I realized if I flipped it up, I'd use the space better, but you just can only stack so many of those on themselves before they start to fall out and be all weird. So I did end up kind of leaving this method, and I adjusted it a little bit, but this was a no-go for me. This is a temporary solution until I figure something else out, because it just really is not gonna work. So that was fail number 1. Actually, number 2, because we already talked about the cabinet, which you're gonna see me redo in a minute. Now we're at the part where I just redo everything I did. First of all, I decided to tackle this drawer because it felt like everything was really messy and I was probably wasting space, and as it turned out, I was. There's a ton of usable storage space that I was not utilizing, and it ended up kind of saving the day. I realized I had like an old texture tool that was it was for embossing folders. It wasn't a die cut machine, it was like embossing only, but my Sizzix does both, so there was no reason to have that machine around, so I set that off to the side. This is why it's good to go through your stuff every so often, because some of it you may not need anymore. I just took everything out of the drawer, and then a lot of this is ribbon that I still haven't organized. Guys, we're back to the ribbon thing. Really kicking my butt. A lot of this is just loose ribbon that I need to put on cards, but that was not for this day. But this is a future project. Probably put that off till the day I die, but anyway. This is kind of the problem with buying containers randomly and buying only 1 or 2 of them, is that nothing goes together, and it's just all kind of random and nothing fits in the container, and I need to be more purposeful about how I buy containers. So then I decided to take all of the memory stuff out and put it in one bin, and then that bin will go in the bottom drawer of the island. And then all the random craft supplies that I rarely use, things like clay and jewelry making, and all the other hyperfixations that I tried and didn't like. There's a bunch of like pieces of wood and little log chips and things like that I just don't use very often, but I want to keep them because they are still useful supplies. Those went in the white cabinet, and I did end up having room for all of it, and I do apologize because I realized as I was filming this that you can't see into the cabinet now because the door is blocking it with this overhead shot. I thought I was being all fancy, but the shot wasn't great. I just wanted you to be able to see the floor and the drawer at the same time, but then that blocked off the cabinet. I was so excited that all that stuff fit, and then I realized that I have 3 like tackle boxes of buttons and chipboard letters that I had organized, and I had to take out the random bin of ribbon in order to make those fit again, but I'm okay with it. And then the top drawer is all paper crafting supplies and was mostly organized, but I did get a little bit of it organized, and I put the photos in the top drawer. And then I just couldn't leave the room a disaster because all the organizing created more of a mess than was there before. So now I had to clean up my organizing mess. Oh, the irony. You can see the finished pegboard in the background with all my ribbon on it. It looks so nice. And I have room on the pegboard to add more stuff, but I kind of want to live with it for a while and see how much, like what I use regularly, because I really want the stuff on there to either be my ribbon and then just tools that I use all the time. And then I need to figure out the paint situation. Also, the shelves that you see behind the ironing board. So there's an ironing board up against some shelves with like a little curtain above. That is not, I don't consider that part of the craft space. Yes, that is space that I have for storage, but I don't consider it part of the craft space because all of that is props for styling and decor. And so I consider that a separate space just because I don't want to mix my craft supplies in with my styling stuff, because that's just going to create more chaos. And so I don't consider that part of my craft space, which is why I just have the one wall and the island, because I have that differentiated for my brain's sake. But I do have 2 bookshelves up against the wall, and you are seeing that in this shot. I don't know if I've showed those before, and so I just wanted to like clarify that's not craft space, that's styling space. Yes, I have a lot of stuff. Yes, we live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and yes, we're a little cramped, to be honest. And before this, up until last year, we were in a 1-bedroom and I had 2 storage units. It was a whole thing. It's the problem when all of your hobbies revolve around collecting things in various forms and using some of it, but not all of it. And I am going to show you, at the very end, I'm going to show some glamour shots, and I'm also going to show you a shot of that ironing board, still not cleaned off because I believe in being honest and real, and there's still a mess in the corner of that room to this very moment as I'm recording this audio. But we've got some areas that look really nice, and I'm just going to live with that for a while. So let's talk about the bin tags as I'm finishing this up. So the bin tags were, like I said, they were from Target. They were $1 for 4. You could absolutely also use stickers. It comes with a dry erase marker. I think it looks messy, but you could use stickers for sure. I happen to have a Cricut, so I used my Cricut to cut some vinyl. And I did white on clear, and I know that's kind of understated, especially when they're going on white baskets, but I didn't want them to be really, really obnoxious in a room that's full of busyness and color and messes everywhere. I wanted just white. Plus, I only have white vinyl and black vinyl, so those were my options, and I didn't like the idea of black vinyl. So that's what I did. But I just like that they don't add much visual chaos. And here are the glamour shots. Thank you so much for joining me. Please let me know in the comments if you want to see more videos like this, and I will see you in the next one.